Intune can manage hundreds of thousands of devices and can help you deploy configuration, security, and applications in a consistent, scalable way. But what about visibility? Sure, Intune tells you if you have a patch installed that's failed, and tells you the version of each operating system on every device you manage. But seeing that data is pretty tough. Intune will always try to show you the compliance of a device, which may not always be the true health of a device. Let's take this computer here, a Dell's Mac Mini. It's compliant. All good. It's got some configuration applied. Let's take a look at that. And okay, we have an error. So we've got the math policy is succeeded. I'm not even sure what the math policy does, but a math policy. And the software updates has some error going on there. That's not good. Let's jump into that. We can see that the target date time and target OS version isn't compliant. But I didn't see that on the dashboard anywhere. If I go back to Dell's Mac Mini, here I see it, but in the overview, no, that's not there. And if I go back to my dashboard, I can see some policies with error. Go into here. There it is, hidden there. Now, a lot of devices have this issue. It's quite simple. Intune isn't giving me the visibility I need for my super small lab environment. Like, let me just go back into devices. This is the information I get per platform. Windows, I've got 10 devices. Mac OS, I have 8. If I go to all devices, I can see some of them are non-compliant, some of them are compliant, and crucially, the one that I have an issue with, Mac Mini from Dell, is compliant, but has some problem with software updates. His last check-in was today, so that's great, but there's some issues, and I don't see them. It's not visible, even in my super small lab environment. You can imagine how this scales with bigger environments. Last week, someone suggested I have a go at Eido. It's a solution that promises to unlock Intune's full potential, and so I signed up for a trial today. According to their website, we get patch management, application metering, policy management, and more, apparently. Now, I'm not a pessimist at heart, but that sounds like a lot to promise. The website seems nice, though, and it's mentioning things like integrations with ServiceNow, Sdesk, Slack, and, well, I guess everything with webhooks. Once you've logged in and set up initial permissions, you're at the dashboard. Let's drill into these a bit more, because right now my estate looks like a little bit of a mess. I think it's probably just my estate, though, because it's much worse than Intune would have you believe. Let's go through each of these on the left-hand side one by one, and we'll see what we're dealing with. So I'll click on devices. Now with devices, you can see all of my devices. So the customer, actually in this case, is my environment. These are the users who access these devices, and my device names are here. Now the Intune last sync is important because we always have devices that just fall off, right? And they're cluttering up our dashboard, so that's important to see. But then we've also got these here. So we've got some red, some green, and some amber. And so this column is compliance, this one is configuration, this will be apps, and this one is OS patch status. So not a single one is all green across the board, which is interesting because, you know, Intune said there were some issues, but I didn't see it. Let's look, just compare the devices blade in Intune, right? Go to all devices, and I see some are non-compliant, and I get the OS version and the last check-in date and the user, so theoretically the same information, but it doesn't give me visually how good or bad each device is. So let's look at this one from Dell Vance. Where is my Dell's Mac Mini? There it is. So it's active, right? 18 minutes ago it was last synchronized with Intune. It's actually right in front of me just here. And it is compliant. You can see this compliant column. It means it's compliant. It has a configuration issue. We saw that, right? It has apps that are up to date, which is good, or at least apps that have no issues, I think. And then also it has some software update issues. Not surprising, we saw that configuration had an issue. So I'm going to click into this configuration one here, and it'll take us over to the device, I think. There you go, yeah. So we can see last sync was 19 minutes ago. It's compliant, which is great. Intune compliance is good. It's missing some update, and we don't know the warranty status. I'm not sure if you get the warranty status publicly with multiple devices. Never mind. So we get all this information from Intune, right? These hardware properties and the enrollment, whether it was enrolled as Azure AD joined or if it's just registered. And great, so we got all that information to hand. If I go into patches, so it's not received the latest version of macOS 15. So 15.3.1, it has not installed, it's missing, which is why we have a red warning on that. If I go into compliance, you can see we've got the default device compliance policy all up and running. That's good. That's compliant. And configuration policies, the software update one, we saw that in the Intune console. The software update one has an issue here, but the math one actually is up and running, so that's good. Now in the managed apps section, we have ChatGPT deployed to it. It seems to be all installed fine. And if I choose all apps, it has, it's actually figured out every version of every app that's installed. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'll go out of that and back to this general device dashboard. Now, the filter and search seems to be a big deal with Eido. Let's have a look at the OS patch status, and I'm going to go for only ones that are red and amber, right? So that's these here. I mean, I've got a pretty small lab environment, but I've got, enough to have some information on this screen for me. So I've got 11 that are red and 5 that are amber. So of those, which devices are actually active? So 4 of them are active, the rest of them are, switched off in a cupboard or rebuilt maybe. So I'll choose only active. And now we've narrowed this down to the devices that I actually care about, right? For keeping them up to date. If they're inactive and they haven't been setting their status update, haven't been synchronizing with Intune, then not all I can do, really. I'm not going to be able to help that. I need to find the device and get it to synchronize or essentially look at that problem in a silo, because if it's not active, there's some other problem that a patch status isn't going to solve. So you can see I've got the device names here, Empirical Gull, Energetic Partridge, Dell's Mac Mini and Dean's Mac Studio. So that's the last sync time, and I have a very bad patch issue with Adele's computer. Let's click on that and see what the issue is here. So missing 2 patches, that's red, and then missing 1 patch is yellow. Missing 1 patch is yellow, and missing, the software update one. So I wonder who decides that this is red versus yellow. So yeah, I could find this information in Intune, but it's not presented in Intune in a way that I can navigate through and drill down. I think this is really a neat way to interact with the environment to actually find that data. And then crucially, I can export this as a CSV and get that information right at my fingertips, and presumably more information than that. Actually, let me open that up and see what information we get. It's opened in numbers rather than Excel, but never mind. It picked up all the information about the device, every bit of information. So it's exported the device information, not just that information that we saw on the screen, which is really cool. Great. So I think that's a very neat solution. I think that gives me a way to filter through the devices and actually find information about the environment that otherwise I'd be desperately trying to build a report in Intune that gave the same kind of information. What else we got? Well, this customer thing's making me think I could add different customers. So let me just add in it. So I've got Next Coffee as a customer that I set up when I built the trial. Let's go into Intune tenants, and I have my Next Coffee tenant. So I'll edit this, and these are the tenant settings. Okay, so with certificate thresholds for VPP, enrollment and push and stuff, I can have a amber after, let's do 30 days, I want a bit of time, and also let's do 14 days for red, because I do want to have a chance to renew these, and that takes a little while for me to get round to. I'll choose save on that, go back into it, and then let's have a look in configuration profiles. What we got here? Got it. Okay, so this is showing me every configuration profile that is deployed to my environment. That math one, for example, we saw. Now, I don't really mind if math doesn't get deployed. I mean, I kind of care, but not enough to get an alert. So for math, I might leave that as green, and it seemed to be overriding the status here for what I actually care about. So for example, basic AV, I'd really like to see this as a red alert if that didn't work. So file vault, for example. The rest of my guess I could leave as you can see my point that I think I'll go through this in much more detail when I'm setting it up, but you can override those thresholds so that if file vault isn't configured, I'll get a red alert, but if math is not configured, then I don't really care that much, and maybe I'll get around to it another time. So that's quite neat. I guess apps has the same concept. Yes, so if admin by request wasn't there, I'd like a red alert. Same with Defender for Endpoint and my global secure access client. But if Todoist wasn't there, I might leave that as red, as green or amber, because it's not that much of a big deal if it's not there. It'll obviously be a big deal for the person who's meant to receive it, but it's not something I need a red alert on. It's not critical. So that makes sense. Okay, so let's add another tenant. I can link a new tenant. So I get to choose an access level of read or write, read-only, limited access, or manual app reg. And I guess this is going to change what permissions are asked for when this tenant linking occurs. I'll choose read and write, and it's asking me to sign in. So I'll use dean@robopackdemo.com. Just log in there and do multi-factor authentication. Obviously, security is very, very important. And so with the Eido full access, that's the read-write that I chose, we get to read-write devices, read and write Intune apps. Same with device config, devices, RBAC, Intune config, all groups, users profiles, and sign in. Now obviously you can, if you'd like, you can make your own custom profile, I guess, or you could use the read-only one if you wanted to. But for me, I wanted to give this a full test in this demo environment. I'll choose accept, and now I can link it to a customer. Now it's obviously not connected to my next coffee tenant, so I can create a new customer, and this is going to be RoboPack Demo. Choose save, and the friendly name is RoboPack Demo Tenant. Great. Link that there. RoboPack Demo Intune Tenant. Great. I'll choose confirm, and we have read-write access here. Okay, so I guess that will take some time to sync. Let me click into it. Choose sync. I suppose it's probably going to do a sync immediately, so I don't need to do that. But after some time, that will probably start filling my tenant with data. So I've got my customers here, and it looks like it'll take a little while for the RoboPack Demo one to appear here, but it will start populating my devices with devices list with the RoboPack Demo tenant as well as my next coffee tenant. And I guess I'll be able to change to just having, right, let me refresh this and see if that's come back with any information yet. Okay, it hasn't yet. So I should be able to change this to RoboPack Demo and then only see RoboPack Demo. Now presumably there's some way to limit my scope and my read access to only look at that particular customer. That would be pretty cool. Oh, look, reporting. Let me click on report. So let's look at operating system support status. Oh, so what have we got here? We have all of this is Next Coffee stuff. We have all my devices, including the iPhone and iOS devices, right? And you can see this means that this iPhone actually was end of life 6 months ago with version 16.6. And yeah, the version is 16.6. The patches, yeah, so we've got 16.6 installed, but that was released 2 years ago, and there is no support for these applications whatsoever, for this version of iOS whatsoever. So that's interesting to know. And look at that, we have 8 months until the end of life of this particular operating system, which is very useful to see. I mean, it will be possible to get that information from Intune, because that is where Eido presumably is getting some of that information to tell us this. But it's just that it's not presented in a nice way in Intune that I've found. If I go back to reports, and let's look at warranty. I doubt I'll have any devices. Oh, I do have a Dell. I've got a Dell that supports, I mean, the rest of them are virtual machines, so there's a Lenovo one here. I think that's a Dell as well, but maybe we haven't gathered information for that. It's not been on for a while, so maybe that's why. But I think, well, clearly Dell is supported. I've purchased it 6 months ago, that's about right, and the warranty expires in 6 months because it's a 12-month warranty. So if I click on it, yeah, that is the device, it's up to date, it's got an active warranty, pretty useful to see that. I mean, if that was a real live environment, you'd likely have many more devices that are, have a purchase date listed and a warranty expiration listed. That makes sense. In fact, that Alienware is over probably 10 years old, actually, thinking about it. That's probably why. Okay, so let's go back to reports. Inventory, that's all our devices, but again, it looks like I can actually filter down through this and only show my Dell devices, for example. That's pretty useful. And only show Alien. Yeah, that's pretty useful to be able to... It's a very responsive interface. That's what I think is useful about this. I'll choose reports. Let's look at encryption. And that also is quite a useful thing to be able to see, because you can see which devices are encrypted and which aren't, and export their CSV and have that information to hand in order to work through it. That's pretty useful. These reports are great, I think. Clearly, this information is in Intune, and Intune reporting has notoriously been pretty bad. It's getting a lot better, but I think Eido actually is a lot better than Intune right now. Let's go back at this OS. This one looks good. So Intune Cert Management. Intune Management Certificate Expiry. Look at this. So we have when the expiry of each certificate is. So for my MacBook Air, it expires on the 18th of November in 9 months' time. This is per device. That's brilliant. So I'm not sure what I'd need to do about this. I mean, it's a good idea to be able to see it, but I'm not sure what I'd be able to do about that. I have to figure out what that actually means I should do. Let's go up here to certificates actually and take a look at that. So here we get information about each of the certs. So my Next Coffee APN cert expires in a year, the VPP is in 6 months, and the enrollment cert is in a year as well. That's interesting to see, and presumably I'd be able to get some kind of notification of that. Have we got some kind of alerting function in this? Let's go to admin, alerts, super. So I could create an alert for Intune VPP cert expiry. Let's see if this actually has a thing. So certificate issues, great. Destination, email, Slack, Teams, webhook, ServiceNow, fantastic. ServiceNow looks properly integrated there, doesn't it? Okay, I'll go with email just to keep it simple. I'll type in dean@nextcoffee.co.uk. Severity, in this case, is going to be red. And, okay, so I can only get an alert generally when any cert is expiring, but that's better than nothing. So it's going to send, if there's any cert expiry, it's going to send an email. Now presumably it will mention which cert, because otherwise it's going to be a bit vague, but I think that's a good start. So I've just got that one there now. I'll create another alert, and there was another alert type which is device issues. Let's see what options we get here. So I can give an alert on compliance issues, config policy issues, app issues, and let's just have a look. If we just, can we untick these? And so if there's a update overdue, I can get a Teams message saying that these devices are out of date. That's great. Let's leave this as an email for now, just to make that easier. I'll choose save. So now I've got 2 alerts set up, And it looks like you can have them for different tenants. So I've got my alerts set up now, which will send me an email or perhaps a ServiceNow ticket whenever something needs to be alerted in the environment. That's pretty neat. Okay, let's look through this finally. OS health, patch compliance. So we see that this device has no support at all. These ones here have updates overdue, and these ones have updates overdue but not so much. And then this one is pending update. What does that mean? So missing updates, updates overdue, up to date, supported operating system. Great. And I guess the only thing I haven't looked at yet is policy management, which looks like a big deal, actually. So what I've seen when I set this up, actually, it asks you if you want to back up the policies from Intune to Eido. And I've discovered 48 policies. This is all of the policies I've got here in my next coffee tenant. Now, presumably, I'm able to back these up, so I can convert to a template. So if I can put to a template, then my low risk compliance policy is now a template. So if I go over to templates, I could have this as a template and presumably deploy that to my different tenants. That's pretty impressive. I think there is the policy as JSON, and I can just choose deploy template. And that's going to deploy it to, let's see what happened when I choose deploy template. It is just deploying that to Intune, and now I need to log into Intune to set the assignment. So if I go over to devices and choose compliance, when I head into Intune, there is my low risk compliant policy here. That's what it was called, right? Low risk compliance. Great, so I can go into that and I could assign that to my devices. And presumably if you have more tenants, you can deploy it to multiple tenants and have that consistent policy applied across all your tenants. I'm sure there's much more I could do with policy management. In fact, I'm sure there's much more I could do with Eido, but I only have one tenant and Ropack hasn't finished synchronizing, so that's going to take a while. I'll maybe come back and do another video on that when that's finished. Let's have a quick look at the dashboard actually. So with the dashboard, I get a good 35% compliance, doesn't sound great, but 14 devices are inactive. Let me see, if I create a new dashboard, can I... look, so I can actually remove these. That's pretty responsive actually. Ooh. Yeah, and if I add, let's look at devices by manufacturer. Hey, look at that. I have 5% Lenovo, Dell, Alienware, Microsoft, and 50% Apple. Sounds me. This is great. I mean, that is a very responsive dashboard. I assume I can just move that around somewhere else, expand it a little bit. It's got these little tile functions. Brilliant. I think that's pretty useful, and I can presumably give different levels of access to different people in the organization so they can do different things with these dashboards, but I can call this devices dashboard. Great. I think Eido just fills that gap between what Intune does and the configurations it can push. You know, Intune's great. You know I love Intune. But it does lack reporting. It does lack visibility, for me at least. And I'm sure for larger organizations that don't just have a few devices, that visibility must be a problem. And Eido is relatively popular from the people I've spoken to. That's why I was asked to have a look at it. I think this might actually be pretty useful. But I think it really does fill a gap with just how Intune provides visibility to larger organizations. If you have used Eido, let me know in the comment. If you haven't and you'd like to give it a go, I'm sure they'll set up a trial like they did for me. I've got 11 days left to play around with this. Please feel free to let me know in the comments how you get on. See you next time.